Okay, guys, here's the deal. Today we're going to be adding drop shadows and a gradient background to the Frankenfaces that you made for today's class. We're just going to jazz up the presentation a little bit, make them look like a little more finished product. So it's important that you follow these instructions pretty carefully, or some things could go dreadfully wrong and you have parts scattered all over the universe. And that starts with this very, very important first step, which is how to import your previous assembled face into the current slideshow where you're going to add the drop shadows and background. So we're going to go back to your other slideshow that you turned in for today. Go to your slide. We're not going to copy the whole slide. That's where problems begin. We're going to drag a selection box just around your pieces. Try to avoid your name if possible. You don't want to include that in your copy. So we selected all these individual layers, and now we're going to, it's going to disappear. I'm going to go up here to Edit, Copy. Simple as that. Then we're going to scroll back to our new slideshow where you're going to paste that whole thing with all the individual layers still intact. Okay, now we're going to add drop shadows to each photo by first clicking on them and then going into Format Options, Drop Shadow, and then you'll be able to adjust the angle, the distance, and the transparency of the shadow that piece now appears to be casting down on the layers below it. What does that look like? Okay, so move my face here for a minute. As we click on individual layers, let's start here. That's nothing. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to click on my nose, and then I'm going to go up to Format Options. Now where can I put my face? My goodness. How about over here? There we go. And we're going to click on Drop Shadow. Boop. Now you might be able to see what it did there. It put a little shadow along the left side. I'll just click that off so you can see. Now our goal is to get a shadow that is consistent throughout. You want to stay consistent with where and how the shadow looks on each of these pieces in order to create a realistic illusion. Here's what I mean by that. You have the ability to change the angle from which the light source appears to be coming. So as you see there now, it's as though the light source is in the lower right corner shining up on that piece. So we have the shadow at the top and left side. What I have found tends to look the most realistic is if we have the shadow cast on the left side of the image and the bottom, as if the light's coming up from the top right. So in order to do that, we're going to be in the angle of approximately 130 degrees or so. Okay, that doesn't need to be a hold fast and true number, but something in that range. The other thing you can adjust here is the distance, or how far that I've never done that before. Woo! That sneeze, that set of 4 was just for you. The distance is easy to overdo, and sometimes it looks a little cheesy if you go too far. I like to set it at about 1/4 of an inch. It'll be in the mid-20s. But again, Uh-oh. Oh my goodness. Should I edit that out? Nah. So the angle's in the 130-degree range, the distance in about 30. Now you can tweak that and find something that you think looks good. The transparency determines just how dark that shadow is. If you have it too dark, it just looks like a hole. And if you have it too light, you don't see anything. So what you're looking for is a balance where you can actually see the shadow, but you see clearly the definition of the photos below it on the lower layers. Okay. Now we can go through, I moved that a little bit. I'm going to unmove it, and then we'll click on this layer, add a drop shadow, tweak it a little bit, make it a little brighter. I'm not going to do all of these. I would be here longer than you are willing to sit still. So I'm going to do a couple. Now, many of you will have irregular shapes, like, say, my ear. And the drop shadows look a little different on the cutout contour shapes. Sometimes they look really good. Sometimes they look just a little funky. And I'm gonna let you decide what you think. Generally, I think if they're not too big, they add a nice little touch. It just gives these more dimension and depth. Transparency usually in the 50s is good. Again, angle, to be consistent with the angle, we're going in the 130-degree range. I would encourage you to play around with the angle. I think what you'll find is that if they don't all kind of match, they start to look disjointed, and it's very much like the light source no longer makes sense. So for instance, what I just did here, I put the shadow on the top right, and if you kind of stand back and look at that, it doesn't unify anymore. Your brain says there's something weird going on here, and it's not just the freaky face I see, it's that light source does not compute. So if you want it to be a realistic illusion or illusion, try to keep it consistent. All right, so I'm going to go through and add drop shadows to all of this. My next challenge is to add the background, the gradient background. And in order to do that, you need to use the text box. And we're going to select a text box and then fill it with a custom gradient or fade or ombre. And then we're going to have to send that layer to the very back, because by creating a text box, we put that layer in the very front and we can no longer see the face. Let me show you what I mean. So we're going to take a text box. I'm going to stop mine right here along the bottom edge because I have that very sharp cut. And if I don't stop the text box right there, it's going to look kind of awkward and obvious to have just a head floating in the middle of this background that has such an obvious cutoff. So I'm going to start with the text box up here. I want to give myself a little breathing room on the top and the sides, but on the bottom, I'm going to stop it right there because there's already that awkward cutoff. Okay. Once I have the text box, I'm going to go to my fill color tool and to gradient. And you can select these preset gradients. I'm going to encourage you to first look at a gray to white gradient. I think they tend to work best with the black and white photos, But if you want to explore some of these other colors, just be careful that they don't overshadow your piece, that they don't distract from what you took so long to try to assemble. Let's go to custom once we've chosen gradient, and know a couple of these things. You have two different gradients. Linear means the light source is going to be coming from the side or a corner. It's going to be coming from the outside in. And you can adjust the angle if you like. You're not seeing it very dramatically because the colors are very similar, but you get the idea. But what I like to do is use the radial gradient, which puts the light at the center and it radiates out and creates sort of a vignette around the outside edges. I'm going to go with a much lighter background. If it's too dark, your piece will kind of disappear and get swallowed up by that background. So you can adjust what your center color is, and you can adjust what your outer perimeter color is. So I'm going to reset that inner color as almost white. I'm going to go with the lightest gray option. And then to reset the outer one, I'm going to back off a little bit. I just lost my mouse. There we go. I'm going to back off from that one to maybe this. Maybe I'll go one click up. Okay, so there's a pretty nice fade, but what I like to do is make the radiant layer in the center a little bigger so the vignette on the outside is a little more clearly defined. In order to do that, we can add a stop. And then basically you're controlling how much glow there is coming from the center. And you can also recolor that. So I'm going to go lighter, and you can kind of see what's happening there. Let's give that a try, see what it looks like. That's not bad. Yeah, I think I want to go just a little bit lighter with that center. Let's go. Yeah, let's go really light so we have a little better contrast out at the edge. Okay, let's try that. Now, because I like frames and I think it really adds a nice finishing touch and gives it a very professional look, I'm going to add a frame here by going up to border weight, and I like a 4 pixel frame, and the color there is black on mine, and I think that's going to make a nice professional look. Now what I need to do is send this layer to the back so that my face shows up. And to do that, we go to Arrange, Order, Send to Back. And there I am. Click off to have a good look. And voila. Okay, guys, there you have it. How to make a nice, finished, professional look on your Frankenface, because it deserves it. Good luck, guys. See you next time.